Hello, welcome to the book report. Got a pretty good one. I enjoyed it. Not great, but good. The light's a little weird here. Forward. Notes on the Future of Our Democracy by Andrew Yang. Yes, the same Andrew Yang that ran for president, or the nomination, the Democratic Party nomination, last presidential cycle. Definitely not for everybody, but I enjoyed it. And if you liked any of Andrew's ideas on the campaign trail, I think you'd enjoy it too. He does have a lot of great ideas. I think some of them are a little off base, but most of them are at least worth looking into, and some of them are spot on, I think. And I just like him. But even if you don't like him, if you're intrigued by any of his ideas, I think it's worth picking up. And even if you weren't, if you're interested in American politics, some parts of this book, it's worth scanning. I think are really insightful and interesting to get a fresh mind entering presidential politics, and that's his first entry into politics. And getting some of his reactions. I thought that was pretty interesting. Okay, so we will start on page 72, where he talks about the decline and prominence of institutional gatekeepers, mainly the media, as part of the growth of extremism. And I really have to disagree here. I don't think it's the loss of prominence in the media gatekeepers that's leading to extremism. I think it's the loss of respect and authority. People just don't believe good sources of information anymore. I mean, it's like you could have a peer-reviewed scientific article, and a large number of people won't give it any credence at all. I mean, so in my mind, it's not. It's the loss of authority and respect, and people giving credence to good sources of information is one of the big things. And of course, he does actually talk about it a little bit, but also social media, what I call human engineering, is a big part of the problem as well. So I agree it's a problem, but I really disagree that the democratization of information sources is not part of the problem. It's loss of respect for good sources of information and people's inability to identify what a good source of information is. All right. So, smarter campaigns. So I thought this was a fascinating observation. So I'll read directly out of the book here. So on the campaign trail, I could clearly see how politicians become susceptible to growing so out of touch. You spend time with dozens of people whose schedules and actions revolve around you. Everyone asks you what you think. You function on appearance. Appearance becomes your role. Empathy becomes optional or even unhelpful. Leadership becomes the appearance of leadership. The process through which we choose leaders neutralizes and reduces the capacities we want most in them. It's cumulative as well. The longer you are in it, the more extreme the effects are likely to be over time. So I thought that was a fascinating observation, that these protracted, long-term television and social media-based campaigns create unempathetic, self-centered, out-of-touch leaders who aren't even real leaders. They just give the appearance of leadership. I think Trump's a perfect example of that. The appearance of a leader to at least some people, anyway. He seems like a buffoon to me, but anyway, I thought that was fascinating. I've always loved the English method of just like 2 weeks. I think you have 2 weeks to campaign in England. keep it short, and they have actual debates, real debates, where you have to actually think and not know all the questions beforehand. So yeah, I think that's a great observation. Oh yeah, and he also talks about the loss of local news media, and he talks about the advertising-based model for newspapers going away and how important that was early on. And yet he doesn't mention. I should have looked it up, but I'm quite sure the federal government heavily subsidized local newspapers early on in the Republic in the late 1700s and early 1800s, all the way through, I think. I don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. And I'm surprised he doesn't mention it because he just wants to throw federal money at everything, which is one of the things I kind of disagree with him on. It's just like money, money, money. Throw money at it. Money, money, money. It's like, no, not everything can be fixed with money. Okay, where are we? So, 204. Oh, we skipped right through that. Okay, so, yeah, and of course, anybody who knows Andrew Yang is probably, knows that he's famous for promoting universal basic income. I generally like the idea in the abstract, but in practical terms, I think a guaranteed jobs program would be way more beneficial, much more affordable, and automatically adjust to variable employment levels. So when the private sector can't employ enough people, the jobs guarantee would pick up the slack. And when there's more employment in the private sector, the jobs guarantee would naturally shrink. And so you'd have a much more affordable, robust addition to our mixed economy, and one that would actually help private enterprise and strengthen our capitalist system, I think. So I, in my mind, the first priority for me would be a jobs guarantee program, and rather than a UBI, I would rather, I live in Alaska, but I would prefer the Alaskan model of a permanent fund and permanent fund dividends. I think actually having real investments in real enterprises, real companies, and then or property or other investments, and then distributing the proceeds to that is much more sustainable. It's more real, and it makes everybody an owner, right? So then every citizen of the U.S. legally is not an owner, but in practice owns a little bit of that permanent fund, and we get a dividend every year. And I think that's the way to move forward at the national level. It's also more compatible. It actually complements the capitalist system rather than just printing dollars and handing them out. So, he gives a shout out to ranked choice voting. He thinks it's the single one. If you could do just one thing to improve our democracy, it's ranked choice voting and open primaries, which Alaska recently implemented, and we're going to have our first cycle on it next year. And I am cautiously optimistic. I agree that it has the potential to help our democracy quite a bit. We'll see about the reality, because theory's one thing, practice is another. But it should encourage and empower moderates, because everyone has to think about who are you going to put on number two, right? So instead of the plurality system that most voting in the U.S. is based on. So I'm very excited about the prospects for that. I hope it works, and I hope it grows. Ranked choice voting and open primaries, very important. And then we get to 241, key ideas. Oh, yeah. I thought this was brilliant. So here he's talking about section 230 of, I don't even know what code, what piece of our law, but anyway, basically it says that internet media corporations are not responsible for content that is posted by users. So you can't sue Facebook for somebody who posted something that's slanderous or a lie or anything like that. And his proposal is we could change. So according to Section 230, amending Section 230 is thus immensely powerful and a historic opportunity. Instead of saying, quote, platforms are not responsible for the content they publish that is created by somebody else, close quote, we could change the standard to, quote, social media platforms are responsible for any content they amplify, close quote. If I could snap my fingers and do that right now, I would. I think that's a great idea. Fantastic. Because basically, another way of saying that is if you're monetizing somebody else's content, then you need to verify that it's not a lie, that it's not slanderous, that it's, So I think that would be fantastic. So if somebody just posts it and it's just out there in the public, but you're not monetizing it and you're not promoting it, then fine. You don't have to look at it. But as soon as you try to monetize that post, that content that somebody else uploaded, you need to vet it and make sure that it's not a lie, right? I think that's brilliant. Great idea. Oh yeah. So and then he had another idea: ad-free social media using federal money. I mean, it's just like, come on, give me a break. I mean, that is not how we should be spending our federal money. I believe there will be a shakeup in the social media space at some point, but and I agree that ad-based social media is a real problem. It leads to human engineering, which is leading to a lot of this extremism and emotional extremism as well. But throwing federal money at it I strongly disagree with that. He just likes to throw money at everything, federal money, and it's like, no, the private sector can do a lot. We can shape it using regulation, laws, and oversight, enforcement, right? Let's see here. Yeah, that was a good point. I'll skip that. Causality is hard to show. Yeah, he's really into fact-based decision making, which I am too, but it can be really hard to show cause and effect because a lot of things that you do today don't take effect for a long, way into the future, sometimes 20, 30 years even. So just because you can't prove cause and effect for something doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it now. But I do strongly support fact-based, decision making for sure. I'm just saying it's tricky. All right, I think we're almost to the end of what I was interested in here. Oh, another great idea he had is, and he's not the first to propose this, but the IRS should calculate most people's taxes. I mean, something like well north of 80% of all filers are relatively basic and just, calculate it, come up with it, and provide how you came up with it. And if somebody disagrees, they can do their own calculations and submit their own. But for most people, it would just take hours, or it would save them a lot of time, stress, effort. It's just boom, done. And it is pretty straightforward for most people. So that's a great idea. And then this one, I had never heard this before. I don't know if he came up with it, but he's talking about how much money we lose because of the loss of IRS funding, which has finally been reversed, thank goodness. In fact, we can estimates are we can make up 80 to 90% of our current budget shortfalls just through IRS enforcement, right? How come that isn't front page news? Anyway, so if you can't hire a new army of IRS auditors, you could allow private firms to finance or even assist with IRS audits and enforcement actions against some of the bad actors. Imagine if the IRS were to say that private investors get 25% of any settlement. That would be a $100 billion pot, one of the biggest opportunities in all of industry. You would have a new army of talented auditors and forensic accountants tracking down fraud for a piece of the action, along with investors willing to bankroll the whole thing. A friend of mine in the legal industry said to me, quote, "You already have lawsuit investors. Investors would throw money and people at this immediately. The financial upside would be enormous." That is a brilliant idea. It would be sort of like bounty hunters, right? Except it's self-funded, right? So it's sort of like he gets the 100 billion figure from, that's a conservative estimate to how much tax fraud is going on in any given year, and that's definitely a lowball number. So if we can't increase the IRS budget enough to close that gap, just give private actors a piece of the action. Bam. It's brilliant, and it engages the private sector. I think that's a fantastic idea. Anyway, fun book, a lot of interesting ideas. I think he's too quick to throw money at things, particularly federal money. But for some of it, I agree, and a lot of other good ideas too. So, interesting book. Until next time, happy reading.